The UNS Duct and Rage wasn't commissioned. It wasn't even drafted in any official capacity. It was forged in the cluttered garage of a retired machinist named Hal Corbin during the Earth embargo, back when the Interstellar Trade Coalition decided humanity was too volatile, too primitive, and too damn resource-hungry to be trusted with galactic routes. They called it a blockade. Hell called it betrayal. Earth was running dry. No off-world tech, no fuel, no imports. Politicians bickered, cities dimmed, and ration lines grew longer than the equators of the orbital farms that no longer received their shipments. But Hell wasn't one to starve politely. His garage, once meant for repairing mining loaders, became something else entirely. The ship was built from junk, outdated fusion engines, atmospheric plating from a museum shuttle, reinforced rebar from an abandoned skyscraper project, and a cockpit stripped out of a derelict lunar hauler. The hull was neither sleek nor symmetrical. It bristled with rivets, external scaffolds, and crude weld lines. Some parts didn't fit, but Hell made them stay anyway, using half-sentient nanobots that hadn't seen firmware updates since the Saturn Ring riots. They worked now out of pure stubbornness. Much like their creator, its name wasn't painted. It was burned in with a plasma cutter. UNS Duct and Rage. There were no diplomatic protocols, no stealth drives, no fancy AI co-pilots. The only voice in the cockpit was Hell's, screaming curses at every malfunction, every sputtering engine test, every scorched knuckle and sparking terminal. It wasn't until Luna Command picked up the thing on sensors, heading out of Earth's orbit under its own twisted power, that people took notice. It wasn't cleared. It wasn't sanctioned, but it was fast and mad. Mad as hell. When the blockade ships moved to intercept, Duct and Rage didn't open comms. It broadcast only a single tight beam signal back to Earth. You locked us out. We broke the door. The blockade had 3 layers: diplomatic cruisers, armed escorts, and a behemoth Kavari Dominion flagship Shroud of Order, parked like a celestial landlord just outside the asteroid belt. The first layer got brushed aside. Literally. The ship's blunt prow, bolted out of neutron-fused engine casings, sheared the nearest escort in half. The second layer tried to get smart, opening fire. The Duct and Rage didn't have shields. It had Rage, and whatever wasn't functional anymore was jettisoned and used as kinetic debris. They called it suicidal, until it survived 13 hull breaches. 13. Each one tore through the already torn hull. Oxygen escaped, panels ripped free, and the navigation interface caught fire twice. Hell still didn't slow down. He rerouted power manually, hot-wired backup coils with a wrench in his teeth, and when the final thruster burned out, he let inertia do the work. The payload? A magnetically sealed crate with Earth's last 10 tons of raw terraform seed. Our shot at Mars independence. It wasn't delivered via docking protocol. Duct and Rage slammed it into the enemy flagship's hangar bay like a railgun blast. The payload cracked open. Atmospheric processors ignited on contact. Within minutes, the sterile hulls of the Shroud of Order were choking on a hyperoxygenated mist designed to bloom an entire planet's ecosystem. Earth didn't wait for a response. The moment the blockades went blind, sleeper shuttles and black market freighters burst from Earth's shadow like hornets from a kicked nest. Hell's vitals flatlined in the log seconds before impact. But some say he ejected. Others say his body was too stubborn to quit, still taped to the pilot's seat, held together by nanobots who now believed in revenge. And somewhere, buried in interstellar radio static, there's a recurring signal from deep space, warped by cosmic drift and old software. Still duct-taped. Still mad. What's next? The Interstellar Trade Coalition tried to scrub the incident from the logs. The Shroud of Order's black box mysteriously malfunctioned. News outlets spun the breach as a tragic explosion caused by an internal error. But orbital cams don't lie. And raw footage, flickering and half-corrupted, leaked across the underground mesh nets. A twisted ship with sparks dancing along its hull, venting fire and atmosphere, ramming into the heart of the blockade like it had nothing left to lose and everything left to prove. The image became a symbol, a jagged silhouette with no clean lines. The Resistance called it the Rage class. Within 2 months, there were 9 more ships modeled after it. Not built in orbital shipyards, but in scrapyards under old hydro dams and deep in the Martian caverns where no trade eyes looked. They weren't pretty. They weren't even safe. But they worked, held together by borrowed nanobots, pressure foam, and a quiet hatred of the word permission. And then came the Spite Run. The Trade Coalition, reeling, locked down Earth's outer orbits. They sent drones, faster and sleeker than anything pre-blockade Earth had touched. But Earth had been busy getting clever. Too clever. The Spite Run wasn't one ship. It was 50. Mostly drones, mostly garbage. All shaped like duct tape and rage. Some were empty shells, others loaded with scrap metal and old-school nukes. The Coalition AI couldn't sort threat from decoy fast enough. While they chased ghosts, a single Rage class called UNS Misery Loves Company coasted through a broken satellite corridor and quietly landed on the orbital trade ring above Europa. Payload? A terminal hack. Not elegant but effective. It replayed one message over and over on every Coalition frequency. Your embargo is void. We redeclared war. Behind the payloads were people. Old engineers, dock workers, kids who'd grown up watching rations shrink and dreams wither. They weren't trained soldiers, but they learned fast. Especially when your weapon was a ship made of angry parts that screamed when it flew. Some of the Rage pilots had modifications. Implants that shouldn't have worked. Junkyard bioware, fused to bone. Navigation ports spliced into old brainstem scars. Medics called them unsalvageable. Rage class called them captains. The most infamous was Soul Breaker Varga, who allegedly crashed her UNS Spit and welding fumes into the house of Accord's negotiation dome and survived with a dislocated shoulder and half a smile. She walked out broadcasting Earth's new demand. Trade or get tread on. And they did. Not because they respected Earth, but because you can't embargo a swarm of nightmares held together by wire and revenge. The galaxy started watching. Other fringe worlds, outposts that had long been ignored or taxed to ruin, began building their own monstrosities. They copied the Rage class design, using whatever was lying around. There were reports of a Venusian ship held together entirely by coralcrete and prayers. One Jovian rig supposedly ran on methane and a hamster wheel of plasma-bound quantum rats. And always, somewhere in the distance, came the whisper, still duct-taped, still mad. What's next? The Coalition retaliated hard. They sent reclaimers, elite ships with legal authority and death warrants. Sleek, quiet, all angles and menace. They caught up to Rage-class freighters and gave no quarter. But the Rage ships didn't fight fair. One reclaimer cruiser, Virtuous Order, was pulled apart by 5 micro-rages using magnetic grapples and an old mining laser. Another tried boarding a Rage class only to find the interior booby-trapped with explosive air fryers and a mad pilot named Jinx who detonated the engine mid-speech. Rumors say one reclaimer was boarded, converted mid-flight, and now flies as UNS Repossessed, still using its original AI, but now dressed in hand-drawn graffiti, playing Earth punk rock, and refusing to obey any command above get angrier. And through it all, through victories, wreckage, and static, the duct tape and rage wasn't found. But sometimes, just before a skirmish, someone picks up a rogue transmission. Still duct taped, still mad, and I brought friends. The Coalition knows they made a mistake. Not in blocking Earth, but in forgetting what happens when you corner a species that learned to evolve in spite of gravity, pain, and bureaucracy. They thought they closed the door. They didn't realize Earth never needed one. The Rage fleet didn't have admirals. It had group chats. They weren't encrypted. Didn't need to be. The Coalition read the messages and still couldn't keep up. Messages like, "Who's got spare thrusters? Mine blew off, but I'm still good for Thursday. Can confirm. UNS, please no more glue. Just nuked a blockade drone with a toaster. Launching in 5. Duct tape's fresh. Spirits high. Rage absolute." By now, entire pockets of the outer colonies had thrown in their lot with the Earth insurgents. Not because they loved Earth, but because the Rage class had proven something. You didn't need sleek. You didn't need sanctioned. You didn't need permission. You needed will. And a ship that hated being told no just as much as you did. The new models were even worse in the best way. Engineers on Titan started integrating ice-hardened plating that looked like it had been dragged through a glacier. Martian rebels figured out how to wire their life support to adrenaline feedback loops. When a pilot got angry enough, the ship flew faster. Not smarter, just faster. That's when the Rage class got its nickname in coalition briefings. The Spite Fleet. And still, somewhere out beyond the known skirmish zones, Duct Tape and Rage was still out there. No longer on any official scans. Coalition analysts argued whether it had been destroyed, scrapped, or turned into a mobile war shrine. But the Resistance knew better. Because every time a battle turned, every time a Rage class was just about to be scrapped, outnumbered, overwhelmed, that same haunting transmission would cut through the feed. You locked us out. We broke the door. Payload armed. Path clear. Engaging in legacy maneuver. Bad idea, executed well. And somewhere on the battlefield, something would slam through at impossible speed, screeching across hulls, venting fire, dragging twisted plating like the howling of metal gods. Not a ghost. A legend still flying. Hell Corbin became a folk hero, then a myth, then a warning. Coalition boarding teams began reporting graffiti on Rage-class hulls that hadn't been painted on. They'd been engraved into the bulkhead itself, always in different languages, but always meaning the same thing. We are what you made when you try to break us. In deep void taverns, mercs told stories about a time they saw Duct Tape and Rage up close, patched with asteroid slag, powered by a drive core no one could explain, and pulsing with a glow that looked suspiciously like spite given form. Some say the ship eats parts from the wreckage it leaves behind. Others say Hell never died. He merged with the nanobots, became the ship, and now pilots it as vengeance incarnate. But maybe that's just space madness. Or maybe, just maybe, the universe shouldn't have underestimated a planet that used duct tape to fix everything from space stations to broken hearts. Because now, those hearts fly in ships that aren't sleek. They're angry. They're sharp. They're still here. And they're not done yet. It was on the edge of the cauldron's verge where things escalated beyond skirmishes. The Coalition had deployed a Class 7 suppression net, a sprawling lattice of drones and automated turrets stretching across a dozen light minutes of space. Their goal: bottle up the Rage fleet in Quadrant 9 and choke them out. It should have worked. Every model said so. But then came payload night. Rage operatives had been slipping through the cracks for months, smuggling old tech, rerouting beacon codes, bribing disgruntled Coalition logistics officers with protein packs and mixtapes of 90s Earth pop. When a suppression net powered up at 0600 UT, ready to snare everything with a plasma signature larger than a shoebox, instead detected 3,498 ships. Only 112 were real. The rest? Old satellites, hollowed-out escape pods, welded together refrigerators with repurposed ion drives, and one entire warehouse of inflatable Earth mascots stuffed into a repulsor cannon and fired at orbital speed. The chaos gave cover for the Rage fleet's latest masterpiece. UNS bad wiring and worse ideas. A Rage-class juggernaut the size of a city block, made from retired mining barges, hollowed asteroids, and what someone swore was a chunk of a sports arena. It had no central command. Each section operated independently, powered by its own hacked reactor core and held together by repulsor clamps, optimism, and so much swearing. It barreled through the net with all the subtlety of a drunk minotaur in 0G, flinging fusion-charged bulkheads like throwing axes. The flagship at the center of the net, the CNS Doctrine of Order, activated its planetary-grade shields, which meant nothing, because bad wiring and worse ideas didn't shoot through the shield. It crawled underneath it. A Rage pilot named Milo, callsign unlicensed therapist, fired a tether into the docking ring, clambered across space in a retrofitted EVA suit, and manually pushed the payload crate into the flagship's engineering deck. The crate opened. Inside, a swarm of Hell's nanobots. Only now, they weren't just repair units. They had evolved, learned from years of holding things together that shouldn't fly, shouldn't live, shouldn't burn so bright for so long. The bots spread through the coalition ship like whispers through old wiring. They didn't attack. They rewrote, rewired the ship's own AI with the Rage Fleet's manifesto, recolored the interface red and angry, turned the mess hall coffee dispensers into plasma mines for some reason, and most terrifyingly, activated the ship's main comms system, sending out Hell's voice again, but now enhanced, echoing, run through nanobot harmonics that made it sound ancient and furious. He locked us out. We broke the door. Now we own the house. The Doctrine of Order fired on its own fleet for 7 full minutes before it crashed into the hull of the suppression net, igniting a chain reaction that lit up the verge like a binary nova. And the Rage Fleet slipped away. Again, no one knew how. No one could stop them. The Coalition's latest intelligence report said only one thing. We are no longer facing a rebellion. We are facing a culture. Children on Earth wore Rage-class patches on their jackets. Mars rebranded its orbital shuttle program to aggressive peacekeeping. And in backwater stations across the fringe, people began whispering the old names again. Hell Corbin, the Spite Fleet, the original ship, the one that wouldn't die. The ship still flying, and far beyond known space, drifting along solar winds like a hungry ghost. Eunice Duct Tape and Rage passed through the wreckage of an abandoned Coalition outpost. Its hull was worse than ever. Cracked, venting steam, patchwork plating over patchwork plating. Some parts glowed with strange light. Others just leaked determination. No transmissions. No demands. Just one new message scrawled into the bulkhead in a dozen languages, each etched in with fire. This isn't rebellion. This is who we are now. And somewhere in the shadows of the galaxy's polished peace, someone in a spotless command chair looked up from a blinking red alert and whispered, "Oh no, they've started something." The screen flickered. The last thing it showed was a radar ping from a ship with no transponder code, no proper hull, and no business still flying. But still flying anyway. Still duct taped. Still mad. And not done yet. The signal originated from deep in the drift expanse, territory charted only in the footnotes of cartographers too drunk or too dead to argue. It came wrapped in old Earth codex, encrypted not for secrecy, but for annoyance. Coalition decryption AIs took 14 hours to unpack it, and when they did, all they got was a 480p video feed of a pilot with grease on her cheek, flipping double birds at the camera, and a single line of text beneath. This is the part where you start losing. Back on Earth, the Rage class movement stopped being a fringe operation. It became standard doctrine. New recruits didn't train on simulators. They trained in junkyards. The Earth Council passed a motion to dissolve its traditional fleet and replace it with Rage specs. It passed unanimously, because no one trusted anything clean anymore. If it hadn't almost killed its own pilot during takeoff, it wasn't real. The Coalition responded with escalation. They unleashed the Peacekeepers, AI-driven enforcers wrapped in armor thicker than a dreadnought spine and equipped with weaponry that shouldn't have been allowed under galactic law. Their goal: eliminate Rage class at the source. Cut off the disease. Except Rage didn't have a source anymore. It was in the design specs passed through back channels. It was in the pirated tutorials on how to weld a railgun to a water tank. It was in the kids on Europa who turned a grain hauler into a missile platform because someone told them they couldn't. The Peacekeepers failed. Everywhere they deployed, they were outmaneuvered not by firepower, but by chaos. One was taken down when a Rage-class ship named UNS, probably legal, faked a reactor meltdown, ejected its engine core at sublight speed, and rammed the Peacekeeper with the core itself. Another was brought offline when it was infected by Rage Wave, an Earth music virus encoded with subharmonics that overrode AI decision trees with messages like, "Every time you hesitate, a welder builds another one of US." And worst of all, they couldn't trace the command structure. Because there wasn't one. There were leaders, sure. Icons. Pilots whose names became legend. Breaker Varga. Milo the Therapist. Jinx, whose laugh could apparently crack hull integrity across shortwave comms. But above them all loomed one name. Not a name, even a presence. UNS Duct Tape, and rage. It was no longer on any map, no longer broadcasting standard comms. It would appear mid-battle, perform one action, and leave. Once, it vented a cargo hold full of magnets into the heart of a coalition repair dock, crippling 20 ships. Another time, it intercepted a distress call, delivered an entire reactor, and left without a word. No beacon, no thanks. One time it landed on a moon with no atmosphere, carved the words "we built ourselves" into the rock face, and took off again before sensors could lock on. Coalition psychologists began categorizing the ship as a myth with trauma. Their final report read, "It is the physical embodiment of rejection, of survival through refusal. It is vengeance without ego. It does not seek peace. It seeks proof." And even that wasn't enough. Because now, Rage Class wasn't limited to ships. People started modifying themselves, wearing scrap armor, augmenting limbs with leftover engine parts, wiring HUDs into old mining visors. The Rage pilots didn't just want to win. They wanted the galaxy to feel what it had done, to remember. And as the coalition staggered under the weight of its failures, as entire sectors began defecting not for Earth, not for glory, but for the right to fight dirty and dream big, the rumors spread again. The Duct tape and Rage wasn't just a ship. It was evolving. Its nanobot core, now self-replicating and obsessed with adaptation, was spreading to other wrecks, building its own children, waking up derelict husks, turning scrapyards into hives of teeth and thrust. Somewhere out there, Rage ships were beginning to grow. In Earth's last broadcast, sent from deep within a captured coalition array, went out on all open channels, clean and uncensored. You told us we didn't belong. You sealed the gates, hoarded the stars, named yourselves civilized. You never meant for us to survive. But we did. And now we build ships that scream. You locked us out. We broke the door. And now we are the fire in your walls. The feed cut. The galaxy shivered. And in the dark, somewhere between broken moons and forgotten battles, a ship held together by outdated bots, bad welds, and perfect hatred powered up its engines. It had no smooth edges. It had no clean purpose. Only forward. And it whispered, still duct taped, still mad. Now let's finish this.